Okay, full speed pass.
So a little helpful tip here. I just opened up this cavity on this wing here, and I noticed this area was all black here, and I can smell like burnt electronics in here. So I think that's what happened to my servos on this thing. It burnt out the other servos. This one here getting fried. So anyway, if you are going to do a repair on this or any servo, I suggest you mark where this is on your rod before you loosen this thing and take out the servo. That way when you put the horn on the new servo and put it back in, you can just slide it back onto the rod in that position. And welcome to the Philip Cockrum channel, viewers. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. It helps this channel grow, and it helps me bring these great videos that we all love. So on today's show, we've got a repair for you of the E-Flite Turbo Timber Evolution 1.5 meter bind and fly. I'm going to tell you what happened to the plane. We'll go over the repair and show you other troubleshooting tips on how to diagnose some of these problems. So this is a warranty issue, so while I do have servos that I could put in and repair this right now and be flying tomorrow, I'm going to wait a few more days because they've already sent the servos to me along with some new decals in case these ones get damaged. So what happened? I was flying the plane. I did the maiden flight. If you didn't see the video, you can check it out on my channel a few weeks ago. I flew 2 or 3 packs. I flew the plane again 2 or 3 packs, and then when I went to fly it a third time, when I plugged it in, both of the wings were dead. The only thing that worked was the LEDs on the wingtips, and that's it on both wings. So all 4 servos on the ailerons and the flaps on both wings were dead, nothing. So of course I was suspect about these plugs that they have, because this is kind of a unique feature even among E-Flite planes. This is the only plane I know that has this specific type of plug system. So it's a nice idea that they've got everything integrated into just one plug for each wing, and then there's a socket on top of the plane that they plug into. So they only go around one way. So it's a nice idea, but you know, because it's a lot of wires and stuff, I suspected that maybe there was a problem with this plug. So anyway, if you do suspect that you have a problem with these servos, the best thing to do is just to open up the cavity, right? And I'll show you how to do that in a second. And remove the servo and test it directly, because you really don't know what this pin configuration is here, right? So, but because this was very unusual that 4 servos would die all at once on a plane, I went to the next level in the testing and stuff. So I cut the plug off and was testing each lead directly with the servo tester before I even opened this up to see. And again, all I could get was the lights that were working. So I could only identify these after I cut this open now to actually test it properly to see that it works. So to do this repair, what you need to do is you're going to need a hobby knife or a razor blade, something very sharp. You're going to need a small Phillips screwdriver and some type of tweezers or needle nose pliers. These are awesome. These long 45-degree things, these are just a lifesaver. I highly recommend all hobbyists get something like this. And then this here is a servo tester. So I usually just use a 3.71 cell when I'm testing these things because it's very low power, but you can put in a proper 6-volt receiver power into it, so you don't need to power up your plane and receiver with a big battery and plug that stuff in to be able to test these type of things. It can also be used to center your servos up too before you install them, so you know that they're centered for you. This is just another servo tester here. This one has 4 outputs. You can plug 4 servos into it at the time, right? But it's basically just a little bit fancier version of this. This is only like $10, and I think this one was $17. And then if you are buying servos to replace them, you've got to remember that there are forward normal servos and reversed servos, okay? So you'll see the serial number, sometimes it'll just have an R at the end of the serial number, which means it's a reversed servo. And it depends on the plane and how they've mounted it inside there of how it's going to sit. So if you're doing a direct replacement, you might have to have the reverse servo for whatever side of the wing that's going on. And it's always a good idea to have Y cables. You seem to always need Y cables. And then these are some rod connection links. These are very, very inexpensive to buy in a packet like this. And that's the same thing that's connecting these rods on here in case you lose them or break them or something like that. Or you want to replace, you know, your bent hook rods or something like that. So just some handy things to have on board. So once I found out that I was going to have to replace these servos for sure, I decided that I'd cut open one of the cavities, and that's when I thought I'd make a video, show you guys. So first thing you want to do is very carefully cut around this opening. You can probably save your decals. And these are held in by some double-sided tape. So they're actually pretty sticky in there. So just be careful, use some type of flat edge to pry it up. And then you want to loosen this screw right here, which is going to loosen the rod here. So I've already done that on this servo. And then what's inside is, you see it has this V shape. So they're held down by this little V triangle shaped plastic bracket. And there's 3 little screws inside there. So undo those 3 little screws, remove the bracket. There's probably a little bit of glue or something on there, but it wasn't much, you know. And if you can't reach in there with your fingers carefully, you might want to use a pair of needle nose. And I'd recommend you grabbing the side of the servo, like the servo mount here, these pieces here, because that's where it's the strongest. So if you've got it disconnected, you can kind of pull it out. There should be a little bit of freedom to the wire, at least to get it out. Now inside here, I've already pulled this out quite a bit, but it was kind of difficult because they had it folded over. So you'll see that there's a normal, you know, extension cable connection here for this servo inside there. So you want to remove that and then plug it into your tester, and then you can know for sure if your servo is dead or not. So the tester is marked with positive and negative. This one here, you can plug actually 3 into it. So we'll plug in the proper receiver battery so you can see it does have full voltage. So it should be moving right now with me hitting this switch. So when this light is on, it should be going back and forth automatically by that. The first light gives me manual control with this knob, and the second light will center it to where it's supposed to be. So you can see this servo is dead. It doesn't do anything. So this is a replacement servo. I just attached a horn on there just so you can see it move a little bit easier, and so you can see how the tester works properly. You might have heard that little noise as soon as I plugged it in. Okay, so it's in the centering. So there's in the back and forth mode. I probably don't have the arm on the center, it's just for demonstration purposes. So there's manual mode. You can see I can turn it with the knob, it works properly. Centering mode, and then full back and forth mode. That way you can test the full operation of your servo, make sure it's okay. So I always like to leave it centered off so I know it's in the center position, and then when I put my arm on, so I'm going to be removing this servo arm off of this servo and put it onto the new servos when I get them. But again, this is just for demonstration purposes, that this servo is just dead. So I have kind of no doubt that these other servos are dead too, because I've tested them and I have nothing at all. So just to move on back to these plug things, so I went to the extent here. This is what all these wires on here. So I went to the full extent here because you don't know what's inside this plug and how these pins are configured, right? You just know that there's 3 sets of wires coming off them, 3 sets of 3, right? But we know what these wires are. They're negative, positive, and a signal, right? So I plugged in this lead here to my servo tester and tested each of these wires directly before I cut this off, because again, I couldn't believe that all 4 servos would go dead at the same time. You know, just in between me flying this plane and plugging it in again, they just didn't work. So you don't obviously have to do this. You can cut, you know, and I don't recommend you do this, right? I mean, I have lots of soldering skills, so I'm going to carefully solder this plug back onto there and unheat shrink them all up. And, you know, it's going to take a few minutes, but, you know, I knew that when I cut the plug off that it was a desperation move before having to cut apart the wings, because, and if I was worried about these extension leads too inside there, because these are going to be kind of hard to get out of the plane. You might even have to be cutting something here. And it was quite difficult just to get this out to unplug the servo, because they had all this lead stuffed right inside this little cavity that was in here, so it was quite difficult. So, you know, I really wanted to make sure that these wires here were okay. All right, now you can test that if you open up these cavities and get access to these leads with a voltmeter. Okay, so you could put a voltmeter on your pins here and test each wire before you go cutting anything or having to cut apart your wing or anything like that. But obviously the easiest thing to do is to, you know, bite the bullet and cut through your decal and covering material. Access these little panels, that's what they're for. Pull your servos out and check these wires directly here, and obviously check your servo, check these wires directly here, and then go from there and see what you need. More than likely it's going to be 1 or 2 servos on your plane, and you know, hopefully you've got long life out of it before that happens, or maybe it's after an incident or a crash or something like that. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you do, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Love and peace from Canada, and we are YouTube.